Hello and welcome, or welcome back if you're joining us yet again for another BBA webinar. I've just noticed I'm showing the wrong slides. That's a fantastic start, isn't it? What are we talking about this week? Well, we're going internal this week and we're looking at the BBA Reinforcing Steel Scheme and everything you need to know about it. Delighted to be joined by two BBA stalwarts that will be taking us through this steel scheme: Simon Wroe, Head of Key Accounts, and Iain Macmillan, Project Support Manager. Both know this scheme inside out and are the perfect people to guide us through it. I'm going to do my bit, of which, if you've joined us before, you will know. But I know Simon will cover what we do in terms of BBA as a bit of an intro into the scheme after my introduction, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. So who the heck are the BBA? The BBA have been around since 1966 and they're there to help build confidence through solutions, designs, and the implementation of products and manufacturing throughout the entire supply chain within construction. The BBA actually develops or looks to develop long-term partnerships through this supply chain for continual growth, both in the UK and within global marketplaces. More importantly, we will always remain reassuringly impartial, and the BBA are actually a for-profit organisation limited by guarantee, which means the BBA look to reinvest in the industry as a whole for the benefit of everybody on this webinar today and the entire construction industry. What the heck do the BBA actually do? Again, Simon will touch upon this again in a few minutes. We're more known for our BBA Admin certification. We do other things like testing, audit and inspection, and more recently UKCA marking conformity. But I'll let Simon go into a bit more detail about what the heck all that means, including the steel reinforcement scheme. To date, issued over 6,000 certificates and counting. By the amount of emails that come through that we see in terms of sending these certificates out, it's more than 6,000. More than 1,000 annual inspections and a number that has increased thanks to Simon's intel. The BBA actually employ 170 people, so we're growing. We're here for everybody on this webinar, as well as the wider construction industry, to help guide, support, and hopefully mitigate risk throughout the construction industry. Okay, what are we going to cover today? We're going to have an overview of the BBA Reinforcing Steel Scheme. Be a bit weird if we didn't do that. We'll dive into what the scheme is, what it includes, why the BBA are getting involved in this if it isn't clear by then, and what this means for yourselves and the industry in general. Finally, we'll finish with a Q&A session. So it's important to note that if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function within this webinar to ask those questions at any time during this webinar, and we will do our best to answer them at the end. If we don't have any time or we don't get round to answering that question, we will get back to you as we've done on all webinars and every single question that's been asked. Massively important to note that. Okay, well, that's more than enough for me. I'd like to hand over to Simon now, who will introduce the new Reinforcing Steel Scheme. Simon, over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Hi, I'm Simon Wroe, currently Head of Key Accounts at the BBA. My background has pretty much been approvals for 30 years and signatories on materials and highways products in construction engineering departments. Yeah, next slide, Peter. Just briefly about the BBA, as Peter said, we're established in 1966. Where we came about was in that time post-war boom in constructions and systems coming onto the market, which innovative systems didn't conform to standards. So they needed specifiers needed some assurance whether these products would work. So we looked around other systems then. There was a system in France from CSTB, the Centre Scientifique to Technique technique de bâtiment. There's something on agreement, which really means technical approvals. So we took that on board and we came up with our agreement certificates, with our first certificate issued in 1967. Since then, we globally in 72 countries and counting, 6,000 certificates just in the agreement. We also do highways associated work as well, and more recently we're coming to UKCA marking, which is a replacement for CE marking post-Brexit. All our systems, well, most of the systems are covered by UCAS regulation on the certification body. Full service officer, we've got 3 main business units. There's product approval and certification. This runs some of our flagship products. Main one, as I said, is agreement certification. So these are independent certificates of performance and use of products. We have HAFAS certification, which is the highways equivalent of agreement, and another main one is United Kingdom conformity assessment marking, bit of a mouthful that, and the Northern Ireland equivalent for harmonised products. There is also a route as well from United Kingdom technical assessments for non-harmonised products, and those are non-mandatory. We do things like reproduction certificates, which are own branding of products, microgeneration, so like solar panels, wind turbines, other generating devices, and various other assessment systems like secured by design on performance and calculations. We have a test business unit, so they can do lots of weird and wonderful things: durability testing, mechanical testing, like wind up, high performance ones, and some bespoke testing as well. If the test doesn't exist, we can look at what's on the market and come up with our own kind of assessment methodology. To complement those 2 units, we have an audit inspection. Part of it is do management systems, the ones that you know and love, like ISO 9001, 14001, 45001, and some dedicated factory control production schemes like Iain 1090 on the structural scheme for there. And just on the bottom there, we've now introduced the reinforcing scheme. Just to complement that, we also do installation quality assurance to make sure now we've got the best products out there in the market, to make sure that they're actually installed and will work properly. So we have things on these high friction systems and highways, managed approved installer schemes, cavity wall schemes, past 2030 Trustmark regulations as well. We collaborate all around UK specifiers like building control, government departments. If they keep changing their names, we've now got the Department of Levelling Up and Housing in communities on there, and we kind of link in well with, I think, LABC guarantees as well, NHBC, and in Europe as well. BBA, we are members of the or observer members now of the European Organisation for Technical Assessments. So these are like-minded companies, as we mentioned before, CSTB in France, DIBT in Germany, and about 20 to 30 other companies there. And also an agreement as well as a partnership with the European Union of Agreement. Really, this one is that we share test methodology, and so if tests and assessments exist, we'll use those methods, and it's really to cut down duplication of test work. So if it's there, if it's valid, if it complies with our UCAS rules on that one, we can use the data. Okay, so how did the BBA get into, or want to get in, reinforced steel market? Well, as we mentioned, we do agreement certificates for a variety of products, and a lot of these have used rebars in the past. I mean, probably over the last 40, 50 years, we've had systems of rebars. On the screen there are just certain systems that are current at the moment. We've got foundation systems, so they would use EPS blocks, insulation, reinforced concrete, and then you've got obviously a steel reinforcing mesh there. One below that, it's not really relevant. It's concrete waterproofing systems, but they have additives into concrete, which are used again with reinforcement rebars. We have foundation deck systems. structural shuttering block systems. These would be concrete blocks all fit together, usually concrete and reinforcement. At the top right, we've got thermal break systems. We've got a variety of insulated concrete formwork systems that we've assessed. These are typically, but not exclusively, EPS kind of hollow blocks, almost like a Lego blocks that interlock together. Use reinforcement vertically, sometimes horizontally, and then reinforced concrete in the gap, so that insulates the internal and external wall. We have balcony connector systems. The two that I've missed out, the one right in the middle, Ancom, we've got couplers which are used really with reinforcement bars, and we've had these BBA certificates, I'd say, for at least 30, possibly 40 years, in our old Roads and Bridges series, and now our HAPAS, the Highways Authority product approval schemes. Then finally, something very recently, and it might get some of the steel manufacturers turning their heads, it's a basalt composite rebar that we've assessed, so as an alternative to steel, which has some advantages. It's about a third of the weight as well, but still some of the same performance. So that is just a brief introduction to the BBA and how we come to reinforcement steel. I'm going to pass over to Iain Macmillan, a colleague of mine, who is really the product lead for the scheme. So here you go, Iain.
Thank you, Simon. Good morning, all. Can I have the next slide, please, Peter? So I'm going to talk you through sort of why we're doing the scheme, the technical detail on the scheme, and a little bit of background behind it. So we all know steel is fundamental to the entire construction market. The BBA exists to support the good of that market, and we've been formed this scheme to extend that support even further. So as Simon alluded to, we already have an existing presence in this sector. We utilise that prime and raw material for Agremont certification. And we also have an existing comprehensive service offering. So we already offer 9001, 14001, 45001, and perform our technical approvals to the industry accepted British standards. We have engaged with the market, so we've listened to what the market wants. We understand that there is need for competition in this market, and we're here to answer that call with a streamlined approach to reinforcing steel certification. Next slide, please. So who's it for? It's for wherever certification in the reinforcing steel sector is required. So that covers production at steel mills. That's where they actually, the material itself is produced. It's melted down and produced in steel bars. We've got the cold rolling, which is a sort of interim process to change the properties of that steel. Fabrication, which is the placing of that steel together and welding that steel into meshes and cages, and then the processing, which is the bending and cutting of the steel, alongside the stocking and distribution of material which has been fabricated. And this is applicable to both UK and overseas clients. As we've said before, we have a number of overseas clients already. We are internationally recognised, and provided you're committed to a standard quality production level, we have a service which is appropriate for you. So a little bit of the technicality here. What does the scheme include? I touched on it earlier. We have streamlined this process. We don't believe in enormous and complex scheme documentation. What we look to do is speak to the market and understand the core requirements and certification requirements against the industry accepted norms. We assess those and then we include them within our scheme as we see fit. So what does this look like? So part one of our scheme, the underpinning scheme requirements, the prerequisite is to have an Iain ISO 9001 certified quality management system from a UCAS or equivalent provider. We are not mandating that this has to be a BBA quality management system. A quality management system that's been certified to a appropriate scope will be acceptable as a baseline for entry into this scheme. Part two, so this is production. So confirmation that the manufacturing and or supply of products conform to BS 4449 and BS 6744. So 6744 is for the stainless side, BS 4449 is for that main production of regular, ordinary reinforcing steel. Cold rolling, that's using the British standard BS 4482. Fabrication, that's 4483. The ISO 17660 Part 1 and 2, which are the welding standards, and 8597, which is the coupler standard. And then for processing, stocking and distribution, it's the processing of steel to BS 8666 and the stocking and distribution of products which are to those aforementioned standards. Quick touch on the overseas materials and imports. Obviously, our focus as the British Board of Agremont is for reinforcing steels and products for use in the UK market, but we do operate in these 72 countries. The scheme can be entered at any of those 4 primary points, so the 4 that I mentioned in the previous slide, so production, cold rolling, fabrication, or stocking and distribution. We have the ability to look at the material entry into your manufacturing process and confirm its compliance through pre-existing certification or otherwise, and then enter wherever and as necessary into our scheme. So we're offering some flexibility here. We will assess these new applications on an individual basis and take into account these existing certifications, but as I said, we're going to be pragmatic about this. We don't want to create dual processes or dual certifications, but we do need to cover ourselves in terms of our assessment and ensure that there are robust entry gates into the process and traceability and validation throughout that material supply chain. So as an example, this could be through documentation trails, raw material supply controls, and testing as required. If any of the attendees today have had a BBA Agremont certificate before, you'll understand there's a quality plan which actually details and controls that. Next slide, please. So steps to certification, application. We've got a nice snazzy new application form that Peter and his team have kindly put together for us. ISO 9001, so that's the recognition, transfer or new certification. Again, to reiterate that point, we are not mandating that you have to perform your ISO 9001 with us. We are a UCAS accredited provider of ISO 9001, so should you wish to consolidate your certification to a single provider, we can offer that service, and we can also transfer your existing certification over to us as well. The next stage is the sampling and internal audit testing. So that's where one of our auditors comes out and witnesses and samples from your production lines. That will be determined, as I said before, on existing certifications, traceability and controls. The next stage is taking those samples. So it's a 50-50 split. So internal testing and UCAS laboratory testing. A key thing here is that we again are not requiring that this UCAS accredited testing has to be subcontracted through us or performed by our testing facilities. We are accepting UCAS accredited test reports as UCAS ensure that impartiality is maintained, and the industry standard is a UCAS accepted, UCAS accredited test report. We're not going to change that. The next stage is the assessment of compliance and certification. So that's actually looking at all of those testing results and the results of the audit and assessing the compliance with the scheme requirements and certification. Post-certification, there's a maintenance element and also the ability to utilize the BBA Steel Reinforcing Scheme logo and also the rolling marks on the material itself. So to cover some benefits of the scheme, it's scalable. I've mentioned this previously, you can scale to additional management systems. We've got 14,001 and 45,001 as part of your commitment to quality. And with Agremont offering for specific use cases, we actually have a slide on that in a moment where I'll talk through how our Agremont offer fits in with this whole ecosystem of certifications. You can bundle with other BBA services, so extending that scalability to both you and your customers. Streamlined, we want to keep it straightforward. We have your interests at heart, enabling you to plan effectively for the long term, and we want to make this an exercise where both parties understand the requirements and are committed to a continuous improvement. So we don't believe in highly complicated and convoluted documentation. The British standards have been established. We're utilising those British standards and the certification requirements, sampling requirements within those British standards. We're offering product conformity assessment to the British standards. So that leads on to, these are robust, tried and tested methodologies. This is the industry standard. We're offering a certification of continuous compliance over time. And we want to work with you to ensure that these robust processes are in place and help you improve. Our packages are cost effective, they're highly cost effective. We don't have these annual levies or application fees. We work on an all-inclusive day rate basis, makes your cost planning easier and for you to understand exactly where your budgets towards certification are going. So this is that slide on how the BBA certified the steel supply chain. It's not necessarily directly in this order, but I think this is a natural flow and progression. You have your management system certification, so your quality management system ISO 9001, your environmental in 14001, your health and safety in 45001. Then we have our reinforcing steel scheme. So as we went through, product conformity assessment to the standards listing there, and also the process conformity assessment to BS 8666. The next point on is UKCA, UKNI and UKTA. So this is something that Simon covered before around regulatory approvals, and we can bundle these things together as part of your journey here. I know that this is quite a hot topic at the minute with UKCA and UKTA. We can offer EN 1090 and CE marking to UKCA marking, and also ETAs to UKTAs. Agremont certification is also the next sort of level up in a way. It's our highest level of attestation for certification, which is a national technical approval and a fitness for purpose assessment. So that's against the national building regulations and also includes things like durability statements. As Simon said earlier, we have our HAPAS and highway certificates. So should you wish to have a Agremont certificate, we can also issue a highways and HAPAS certificate, which gains you access to highway specifications. We found that Agremont certification from our existing portfolio and from engaging with industry is appropriate for products such as couplers, continuity systems, innovative materials such as the basalt fibre reinforcement or glass fibre reinforcement materials, and also connection systems and thermal brakes. So that's how we see it fitting together, and we're happy to take any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Simon and Iain. Always appreciated your knowledge and experience. Yes, so any questions? If anybody's got any questions, there's still time to put them in the Q&A function on the webinar, and we'll try our best to answer them. We've got a few to get through, so we've got 5 minutes or an allotted time of 5 minutes still. So the first question, I think you were alluded to it earlier, Iain. How is BBA certified material actually identified?
Oh, apologies, I was on mute there,
Yeah.
Peter. Yeah, so BBA certified material is identified through the BBA rolling mark, which is applied to the material at the production stage. There's also this traceability assessment through labelling and packaging, which is included within the scheme. The BBA rolling mark itself is actually placed after the works number on your steel product.
Okay, cool. Excellent. So there's another one here. Interesting one, really. Who owns the data resulting from like certification activities that we do in throughout the process?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. We listened to the industry on this and we realized there was a bit of a hole here. This is why we do not own the data. You, as the client own your own data. You can use that data for however you see fit. Your reports will be through your chosen laboratory or your UCAS chosen laboratory, and you can utilize those for your own marketing or other certification purposes. We are simply requesting the evidence of that report existing, and we will use that solely and only for certification purposes, nothing beyond that.
Cool, excellent. I've just realised I'm kind of in a hot sunlight spot there, which isn't ideal for my camera, but anyway, that is not important. Just a couple of questions from Dave Sheedy, and they are really interesting actually. The first one, it doesn't make much sense to me, but hopefully it will to you chaps. He says, on fabrication, are you not covering BS 8548?
Morteza, would you mind picking that question up for us, please?
I need some time to answer that question, so if you don't mind, I will answer that question through an email.
Yeah,
if Dave
absolutely.
can leave an email address, I will answer that question.
That's fine, no problem. We've got Dave's email address, Morteza. I'll link up with you at the end of this and sort that out. Morteza has joined us because he's been fundamental to setting this scheme up. So he's just joined us for the back end if there's any technical questions. But it's fantastic that he can join us to try and answer these. Okay, so another one from Dave again, who asks, due to the specialisation of the industry, will your auditors have the specialist industry knowledge to carry out the process? That's the first part. He's got a second part, but if somebody could answer that and then I'll move on to that second part, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I just want to jump back just really quickly, Peter, to the first one, which is on the standards. In terms of the scheme itself, Morteza will come back to that, but the second part of that is Agremont certification affords flexibility in the assessment. So the answer would be yes, we can perform assessments utilizing that standard under Agremont certification, and Morteza will provide more technical detail on the inclusion within the scheme itself. The second part, in terms of the auditors, yes, our audit team have been fully trained. We have technical experts and a wealth of experience at the BBA dealing with reinforcing steel products. These auditors are our sort of specialty auditors covering our ISO 9001 audits and are engaging with the market as we speak. As you said before, they have undertaken rigorous training also.
Fantastic. And the second part of Dave's question, Iain, I think this might be one for you. He says, will you be offering a sustainability scheme to match what is already available in the market?
Aha, right. So that's an interesting question. The answer is yes, the BBA is currently undertaking a series of new product development exercises looking at environmental certification and how we best fit into that arena. We want to come with a strong offer that actually stands for something, isn't greenwashing, and is is purposeful and useful to the industry. Specifically in relation to reinforcing steel certification, there is an existing provider. There is in UK Cares. There is also a existing provider. I won't go into the details. However, these are based quite heavily on BS 6001 plus some additional processes. From the initial industry feedback, it seems that BES 6001 responsible sourcing is an appropriate alternative standard, which is available through a number of different providers. We would be looking to utilize your existing certifications as part of our scheme and include those as references. To get to the point, the answer is at the minute, no, we do not offer a equivalent environmental certification. The slightly lengthier answer is yes, we are fully aware and investigating and would like to hear more from you as to what you would like to see from our scheme.
I think one of the key phrases you used there was greenwashing, and that's probably why we don't currently offer it, and we're working towards it, because we want it to be something that's robust and of substance, rather than just this greenwash, which the more I think about it, the more I think Fairy Liquid probably wishes they registered that as a trademark right now. Yeah, but we're not into the greenwashing. We want it to be of substance when we do release something. Okay, final question. Let's finish on this one. One from Jeremy Holhouse. Welcome, Jeremy. Thank you for the question. And his question, the final one of the day, is: will there be a surveillance scheme for the installation of the rebar, similar to some of your other product certification schemes?
There can be. There isn't at the minute that's linked into this scheme. However, there can be. We have a sort of templated approach to installation schemes, and our auditors and inspectors are aware of that approach. We can look to develop one very quickly, and yes, we can do that. The answer is it offered as a sort of direct service at the minute? No, it's not. However, I would make it very clear that yes, this is something we can offer.
Fantastic, good answer, and I think we'll leave it there. So final words, as always, from me. Thank you so much to everybody that has joined us today for this webinar. Very much appreciated for your time. Thanks to Simon, thanks to Iain, thanks to Morteza for joining us. Thank you for your knowledge and input, much appreciated as always.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
It's been a pleasure.
And
Thanks, Peter.
no worries. And finally, from me, hopefully you'll join us next week. I think we've got 2 or 3 webinars left of this year. They should be interesting. Off the top of my head, I can't say which ones next week. I need to write that down. Note for self, admin on air, shouldn't do that. So finally, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week.